So good afternoon. My name is Elida Bonet from Capital Idea. I am so glad that you have joined us to the Capital Idea College Success Workshop Series 2021. Today, we have the honor of having Joe with us from Academic Coaching. He will be talking to us about traction, how to stay on task, and I know that you will find it very useful, especially now that we are in the middle of the semester. So with us, Joseph Lockwood,
cool.
And it is time for you. And I will stop sharing and then you can share.
Okay. All right, guys. My name is Joe Lockwood. I like to say, believe it or not, I'm one of your academic coaches here at ACC. And I put together this one or this one. Last semester. It was originally distractions and how to stay focused, but I decided to rename it. And if next time you see it, if you see it again, there'll be some different slides, I'm sure. But I decided to rename it Traction because it's working in the affirmative, right? It's still the same presentation generally, but instead of focusing on the distractions, this introduced me to the new idea of sort of traction, right? That's the opposite of distraction. Is traction. So we're going to think more about like how to maintain traction and exactly what that means and what that looks like. And there's some action steps at the bottom or at the end, and hopefully we'll get to all of that stuff. But my goal really is to help you understand really what's happening in the moment, and then so that you can begin to develop some action steps for yourself. Okay. Here's all the housekeeping stuff that we just did. So we'll skip that one or whatever. And then here I am without my beard or whatever. Feel free to weigh in on the chat on that one. Should I shave it? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, there I am without my beard, looking weird, but this is me, okay? I work at Highland in the accelerator. Oh, I bet you I can get the chat from here. Oh, I can. Beard fan, thanks. So you can find me at Highland in the accelerator generally. Let's see, right now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm in here. And then I am at home on Friday, and I am available virtually as well on Sunday. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if you come in here, you will certainly find me here in the accelerator. If you're not familiar, that's what this room is behind me or whatever. And that this picture is taken out front. So let's see why. There we go. All right, so we're going to talk about some different types of distractions, internal and external cues and distractions and things like that. Understand exactly how we become distracted. And then, like I said, you talk about some strategies to stay focused. If at any given point you want to share, interrupt me, I like to say that this is, like she said, it's a conversation. Whenever you hear my voice, please feel free to interrupt me because I really want to talk with you and not at you. And guaranteed, if you have a comment or a question or concern, you're probably not the only one out there, okay? So the next slide, distraction. The definition of a distraction, a thing that prevents us from giving our full attention to something else. The reason why full is red is because we as a society have begun to place this premium on multitasking, which is exactly the opposite of that. It's dividing our attention. Okay, you cannot give full attention to 2 or 3 things at one time. You can only give your full attention to one thing at a time. And what you will find, particularly as you get older, is that 9 times out of 10, you actually get more work done if you just do one thing and finish it and then do the next thing and finish it, as opposed to trying to do 2 things at once. Or you just have a general quality, higher quality of life, right? I used to, when I was in middle school, working with the middle schoolers, and I used to tell them, you guys aren't doing either one of these things, right? You're trying to play and work, and your work is not done correctly, and you're not having as much fun as you would have if you had just finished your work, and then I would have let you play instead of having me coming around harassing you every 10 minutes. So just do one thing and move on, okay? And the other thing, number 2, extreme agitation of the mind or emotions. And I think like we grasp onto the mind thing a lot, but oftentimes we don't really understand how our emotions are playing into what's going on here. And that's something we're going to talk a lot about because we are one thing, we're one animal. And we work in conjunction. Everything is moving. Our mind, our heart and our body and everything are moving all in one conjunction, they're working in unison. And should one of them, let's say your blood sugar goes down, right? It becomes very difficult for your mind to stay focused, and then becomes very frustrating, and vice versa, okay? So we wanna keep cognizant of our entire person at all times. We wanna try to take inventory of your mind, your emotional state, and your physical state at all times, okay? So we have here this word called acrasia. When we first got sent home, you know, it was like, oh, right, you know, no more, don't got to go to work, don't got to get in the car, I'm gonna do all this stuff or whatever. So I'm gonna go get all kinds of stuff done. And gradually, it became very clear to me that even without all these distractions, it was still very difficult to get done all the things I had planned. To the tune of me asking my therapist, like, yo, what in the world is this thing that keeps us from doing what we know we ought to be doing? And she talked about attachment, you know, and all of these different things. And then gradually I came across this term in a book called Atomic Habits, okay? Which we may or may not reference. There's a whole nother presentation for that. But this word called acrasia, all right? And it's basically just that. It's humans' tendency to not do what we ought to do. The definition here is the state of mind in which someone acts against their better judgment through weakness of will. And we'll talk about this weakness of will thing after the fact, okay? Because I mean, I'm with it all the way up to that weakness of will thing, and we'll kind of talk about what that really means, because that is certainly, you know, the pervasive attitude, right? If we just tried harder and, you know, we just more stick to it, more, and if we just cared more and like all this other stuff, well, guess what? That's not necessarily the truth. There's a lot of different reasons why we have a tendency to operate this way, but not the least of which is that particularly we're not really built for these long, protracted tasks. And we'll talk about that here, but trying to do something, you know, for 4 hours every day over a 16-week period, the same thing, we're really not built for that at all. And that's what we're gonna get into here. But before I keep going, any comments, questions, concerns before I keep on rolling? Because this one is a lot of information and I will talk your face blue. Oh, some popped up in the chat. Oh, not yet. Okay, thank you. Okay. So what are some of your, I like to say, what are some of your favorite distractions, but what are some of your most common distractions? You can unmute yourself or you can share in the chat. Phone, yup. Phone. Netflix. TV, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Phone, social media. What are you looking at? I mean, TV or Netflix?
Maybe like movies or some important TV shows.
Oh, important TV shows, huh? Those important TV shows, not to be fooled with, you know, never mind. Let's just, so kids popped up. Yeah, and kids is a big one because we can't control that one. But I think the big thing to that one is that that means that we need to control the things that we can, because when they come a knocking, we're on their schedule. I had a student last week, their daycare got struck by lightning. Like literally. Yeah, daycare got struck by lightning and little man was at home all week long. And it was funny because the week before she was asking me like directly, like, how do you, so we're trying to, you know, develop some strategies. And then the next week it just gets struck by lightning. So, you know, that's one of those things. Yeah, but that's, you know, we can't control that. But that's why in life, it really is really important to identify the things we can control and control them. And that's why. Okay. Yeah, everyone was all right. Like, I don't think anybody was there. I think it was overnight. You know, I think you just get up in the morning and then it's just struck by lightning. You know? So, but that's a true story. It really happened. So, okay. So here's this thing. And Alita has now become familiar with this man. His name is Nir Eyal. I almost said Nia, but it's Nir Eyal, okay? And he actually wrote a book to teach people how to make their apps more addictive. And then he turned around and wrote a book to teach us how not to fall for all of these tricks, okay? And that's where this comes from, the book that he wrote for us. And I guess, oh, look, there's this little website down there, near and far. If you go there, I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff. But when I first saw this little diagram, like, I don't know, this set off the whole thing for me, okay? And I think this goes a long way to explaining, sort of at least beginning to explain what's going on. So we see here traction and distraction, right? Traction is the one that we want. Distraction is the one that we don't want. It's kind of the, but it's kind of the one we got. And what you find is that we tend towards distraction, okay? We do not lend naturally towards traction. Traction is something that we have to maintain. Distraction is something that we will do just left to our own devices with no effort. And that's why I decided to rename this, because it's the idea is to work in the affirmative. So instead of like, I'm not going to be distracted anymore, which is hard to not do things, it's way easier to do something new. So instead of like stopping being distracted, what we're going to do is we're going to maintain our traction. Okay. And that's where we're going to place our focus, is maintaining traction. So you look at this thing and you see internal triggers and external triggers. Neither one of those are completely in our control at all times. All right. However, we have a little bit more agency over these internal triggers than we do over these external triggers, right? Somebody decides to throw up on the carpet. Well, guess what? We got to stop and we have to clean that mess up. That's all we can do. We look around and we are dwelling on our childhood 15 years later. Well, guess what? You know what I'm saying? We might be able to work with that. It's going to take us a lot. I think we can cope with that much quicker and simpler and easier than we can vomit on the carpet, even though vomit on the carpet may sound more attractive than trying to deal with childhood trauma, okay? But we can handle that way quicker and get back to work, especially once we're aware. And in all honesty, that was one of the first things that I noticed too when I was sent home quarantine. I live alone or whatever, so you know, I'm just walking around the house, and that was one thing I kept asking myself, like, why in the world do I keep thinking about all these miserable things? And then I did this presentation, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But this is going to pop up here again. But I think it's really important to kind of understand like what's happening. I mean, you have those external triggers like children and the phone, which we can control. And then you have those internal triggers, which we may not be aware of. But I think once I bring it to your attention, you're going to be a lot more aware, and it's going to be much easier to get back to work. Because what usually happens is one of these internal triggers comes along and we start running from that. And we usually grab the first thing, which is the phone. But like I said, we're going to talk more about that in a minute. So here we go. So the beginning of the whole thing, gang, our brain refocuses every 4 seconds. Okay, this is a perfectly healthy brain. The reason it does that is so that we can swat mosquitoes or we can see houseflies. Okay, it's because we are constantly supposed to be scanning our surroundings for changes. If you imagine like almost prehistoric man or whatever, walking across a savanna or whatever, hunting anything. And I don't know if you realize what that's really like, but that can take days of walking, right? And you're walking across a savanna and it's just grass for as far as you can see for 3 days, nothing but grass. Well, you're scanning the tops of that grass for any change, right? Because any change on the horizon could be the difference between life or death. And that's what you're doing every 4 seconds. But now we've created this environment where there's all kinds of junk around us every 4 seconds. And opposed to looking for distractions, we're fighting off distractions or looking for things to get our attention. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll talk, because that's the thing is, like, these goals, these long protracted goals are really they're not normal. And it's really, really hard to maintain quote unquote motivation. And the truth is, I think the way that we frame motivation is not appropriate, because that sort of motivation wanes. And I think the expectation to not feel like doing it and then figuring out how to get it done is really where it's at. Not how do I feel like doing it all the time? It's how do I do it even when I don't feel like doing it, okay? But to get back here, like your brain refocuses every 4 seconds, whether you like it or not, okay? And then not only does it do that, but it has biases, meaning that it prefers to think about certain things over other certain things. For instance, humans, we trend towards dissatisfaction, okay? Which sounds really like not very romantic at all, right? And, you know, just downright depressing, actually. But the truth of that is that's why you were all here. If you were all completely satisfied with your station in life, you would just be at home or work or whatever, just living, smiling, and going on about your business. Instead, you're here with your forehead all wrinkled up, working hard, trying to make something more out of your life. And the reason why is because you were dissatisfied with where you were at. The reason why we do that is because most of the things we need to do tend to be over on that side of things, right? Like paying our bills. Like no one wants to think, if we were left up to our own devices, we'd never think about paying our bills, right? Oh man, it's just stressful. But you keep thinking about it because it needs to get done. And that's why you sit there like, oh, the bills, even though you do that, that's why, okay? So that's the first thing, is understanding, like, once again, you're not broken, which was, I couldn't figure. I thought I was just like, had a bad attitude or something all the way up. I mean, I'm 44, guys, or I'll be 44 in January. So it's like 43 years old sitting at home like, man, you know, still thinking like I just had a bad attitude. But now I realize like, oh, okay, well, we all trend towards this dissatisfaction, right? And then here come these biases. Thusly, we have a negativity bias, meaning that we have a tendency to think about the things that are dissatisfying to us, okay? Not only do we have a negativity bias, we have a novelty bias, really. And the novelty slide should be first, meaning that every 4 seconds, once you've been thinking about something for 4 seconds, you're ready to think about something new. And that's just the way it is, okay? And what'll happen is every 4 seconds, since we have this negativity bias and this dissatisfaction bias, every 4 seconds, you're most likely to trend towards something negative, and probably something from the past because it already happened, all right? And we're thinking about the future causes us anxiety. So what we have are, if every 4 seconds, we're trying to think of something new, and if we don't give our brain something attractive, it is gonna gravitate towards something from the past that was generally not positive, which is hard to deal with because a lot of stuff from our past, it's over and there's nothing we can do about it, right? And if we were to think about our past, we'd love to think about, like, you know, our 7th birthday, that was so awesome. But the truth is that awesome birthday doesn't have very much bearing on tomorrow, okay? And that's why we trend this way. As a result, that's also why we have developed so many different ways to distract ourselves, okay? Because left up to our own devices is only either algebra or childhood trauma. And we don't feel like thinking of either one of them. Once we've thought about algebra for 4 seconds, we're tired of it. And we're gonna think about a childhood trauma. And we're just like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this again. And thusly, we have now created this environment of instant gratification because we are so sick of thinking about both of those two things. So the moment we sit there, we're gonna make ourselves try to do algebra, and then finally we're just like, ugh. And then we're gonna look up, and before we give ourselves a chance to get depressed, we're gonna grab our phone. And that's generally what happens. And the truth is, that's what those internal triggers are. Like if you ever wonder why you could turn your phone face down and you'll just grab it and start looking at it. Why? Because you've developed a habit. Once upon a time, you got depressed and then you grabbed the phone and then you looked at Instagram and it was dumb funny and you just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed, which I really have developed an Instagram habit, and I will laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh over the right thing. But 9 times out of 10, we'll get on there, and some of you guys will just doom scroll or hate scroll, which is really funny. You guys taught me that term, both of those terms, where it's like you guys aren't even trying to laugh. Like I'm not sure what some of you guys are doing, But that's also why I got off of Facebook, because Instagram is way funny. But the point is that what we've done now is create this environment to satiate that need to not think about basically, our childhood trauma. Like the way I like to kind of set this whole thing up is like, imagine if you were like Paleolithic man has a hamburger or creates a hamburger, right? And the person to have the quickest snap reaction to this hamburger is most likely to eat. So that's where we're wired, to hurry up and get a bite of that hamburger. But now what we've done is create this environment where we're surrounded with hamburgers. And all of that work that went into creating the hamburger didn't disappear like we thought it did. What has now happened is all of that work now goes into making sure we don't eat so many hamburgers that we poison ourselves, like most literally. And that's what it is. If Instagram is a hamburger and algebra is broccoli, you know what I'm saying? Like we're spending this whole time like fighting off these burgers so we can eat the little bit of broccoli that we need in order to keep ourselves alive. That this is all making sense. The point is that like you're not doing anything wrong, and you're not like broken to be fixed. It's this is the reality of our environment. And there are times like, I was talking to a student earlier today, and there are times like people resent me for doing that. But man, you can't fix nothing if you don't know what it actually is. And I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke and everything else just for this not to work, and then everybody's wondering how come it didn't work? Well, man, you know what I'm saying? Because this is what you were actually trying to do. Okay. And grit and stick-to-itiveness and all this other stuff. If you don't know what it is you are trying to do, you can try as hard as you want to, but the likelihood of succeeding is slim. Okay. So this is, all the things that you guys, yes, exactly. Oh, that's Alita. So again,
hey,
lastly,
I learn something from you every time, because you have really changed this, and I love what you have added. So thank you.
Honestly, this is the same one. It's like I keep winging it, but like, so well, it's because I really use this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's by the time I see you again, either I've developed personally or some students have pushed this along. So here, creating habits, right? And that's the last one. Is like now we have created this environment of instant gratification, right? So we can make sure that we get a taste of the Paleolithic hamburger or whatever. And now we've created a habit out of grabbing our phone. And that's why oftentimes if you just see it, guys, the real truth is we have come to the point now where we have created an autonomic response to the phone. Okay, if you guys are familiar with like Pavlov and his dog or whatever, what Pavlov did is feed the dog at the same time, and before he fed him, he'd ring the bell, right? Or at the same time, he'd ring a bell. Then one day he decides to not feed the dog and ring the bell and see what happens. Well, we're all like, yeah, the dog thought he was gonna eat. Sure, we all know that was gonna happen, but the dog starts salivating. The reason why I realized over the years that that's so important is because you cannot make yourself drool. Neither can a dog, no matter how bad you want to. Like if you try right now to just make yourself start drooling, you can't do it. But let the right smell come into the air and you haven't eaten and you're gonna start salivating. That's an autonomic response. That's something you can't control. All right. So a lot of times we think that discipline looks like somebody who can just sit there and then the phone's blowing up in their face, but they care so much about algebra that they don't touch it. The truth is that person doesn't exist. The moment a green notification flashes on that phone, the entire world goes, oh, we're all gonna jump too, because that green notification has been good news or bad news so many times, right? That, don't let us be waiting to hear from somebody. So that's why it's like you're better off leaving it in another room, which is something we're going to talk about. Like I have my phone flipped over, but like I said, if I get bored and before I start thinking about all the depressing housework I have to do, I'm going to grab my phone. You headed off at the pass. You've created these habits to head things off at the pass. The reason why we create these habits is so that we can conserve energy. Okay, which is also kind of interesting thing to think about, right? Because algebra obviously is my favorite example for a number of different reasons. But you remember when we were in high school and we would sit down to do algebra and we put our headphones on and we're just like, man, you know, we're banging out our algebra. And then an hour and a half later, you look down 30 problems. I don't remember doing any of them. Perfect. We won. I didn't feel a thing. You know what I'm saying? And I got all my homework done. I didn't feel anything. Well, what you find at this level is if you do that, you're very unlikely to remember. You were unlikely to remember in high school, but in high school, you went back the next day and they were like, whoa, guys, before I give you more algebra, let's make sure you understand the old algebra. At this level, that doesn't happen. And if you do your work that way, you will create a habit of doing these algebra problems over and over and over, and you will not pay attention to what you are doing. Okay, so creating habits, we want to create the habits that are going to trend the direction that we want. But I just think it's really important to understand like why we created these negative habits, and also how easily we can make a habit out of things, because it's something else that we trend to do. We don't, once again, our brain does this to save energy. If we are this Paleolithic man, again, picking berries, okay, we don't want to have to think about every single berry before we pick it, right? We want to be watching out for predators, or make sure we don't get hit in the head and dragged over to the next village. You know what I mean? While we're picking our berries. So it gradually, when you see the right color berry, you just grab it. And if it's not too hard, it's not too soft, you just grab it and you throw it in the thing, and you don't think twice about it. And that's really what habit forming is about. Once again, it's not, you know, you're not doing nothing wrong. This is the way we were designed. And once upon a time, it helped us. But now, you know, too many hamburgers, and we have a bad hamburger habit. And that's where we're at. Is this making sense? I'm checking the chat right now, guys. And I see, would it help to focus with a particular task if we consciously think? I think that what happens is you just do your best. And then when you catch yourself, like my personal thing is, wait, what does that say? If I'm reading and I wait, what does that say 3 times? I stop. Because that means I'm fighting. And even if I get through the reading, I'm probably not going to remember what was in the reading. So, I mean, I think in practice, you roll and just start working. But if you notice yourself, thank you. If you notice yourself, we're going to talk about that. Really, it's your awareness, which is actually a pretty good segue. I think this was coming next. But if you feel your awareness wandering off, you can bring it back. But there are also times where you need to just let it go. The thing is, you want to be cognizant of wherever it's going. And that's where we're messing up a lot. We're either on algebra or God knows what. And really what we want to do is, like, if we're not on algebra, we don't want to be in the ether. We at least want to be off somewhere, generally productive, right? Or if it's at all possible, just really hard to do, is just be nowhere for as long as possible so your mind can get some rest. But it's really hard to be nowhere. Usually what happens is you get triggered and then you just run off somewhere. You run off to wherever your happy place used to be, whether it's Netflix, Instagram, or just, you know, checking texts or whatever it is. So here is this doodad again. And hopefully this makes a little bit more sense now, right? You have these internal triggers and external triggers like coming at you all the time. The internal triggers, oftentimes, like, I really wasn't even aware that was a thing, right? Before I got into it. I mean, I think we all are, but not really. How really the vast majority of distraction starts there. And as soon as you feel uncomfortable, then you look over here to find an external trigger to give you something to do. And that's usually what happens 9 times out of 10. You know, but the thing is, like, once again, look, there's 3 things over here that are there's only one place we want to be is traction. And we got 3 places that are all, you know, more attractive than traction. So, you know, staying on task is not, we take it for granted, and we have a tendency to beat ourselves up over it if we can't do it. But man, we are not wired to sit down and do something for 4 hours for 16 weeks. Then there's a number of different reasons why, not the least of which all the things we've talked about today. All right, so here's my man, Danapani. And this cat, this portion is all about, normally I'll share it, but I think I'm just going to talk through it. This portion is all about your awareness and the true nature of our mind. And this, for me, is when stuff really starts getting good, right? All the stuff we talked about before was our brain. That's our physiology. And I don't want to get super deep, but this is, I want to get deep. I don't want to get super deep, but I do want to get super deep because, like, we talked about our brain. Our mind and our brain are not the same thing. Okay, right? We have our heart, our mind, and our body. Well, our brain is part of our body. Our mind is something else. So all we've talked about up to this point is the way that our brain is wired. Now let's talk about like the true nature of our mind. Okay, and so like he says that number one, none of us were taught formally how to concentrate. We were all reprimanded for not being able to concentrate. I know that I have a personal diagnosis. I have an ADD diagnosis. I got it when I was 19. I did not take the pill. I was scared to death. Okay. But everybody's relationship with their diagnosis are very personal. Okay. By a long shot, but that's my personal experience. And he references some of that. And he says that our society has trended that direction as opposed to stopping to teach us like how to focus our mind. Okay. What he says is that it's actually our awareness that wanders off and not our mind. Okay. Our mind is stagnant. Our mind contains everything that we know and have seen. And our awareness travels around our mind. So when you get distracted, your awareness begins at the algebra portion. And then gradually the childhood trauma portion might sneak up on you. And then your awareness runs away from that and algebra, and it goes to anywhere that's more comfortable than either of those two places. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the thing is about that stuff, man. I mean, this is really hard for me to talk about because it's just like I definitely don't want to disturb anybody's presence. But the thing is that 9 times out of 10, they're not really sure what's going on, and they give you something and then measure the result. So I think the important thing is the result. You know what I'm saying? If you're getting the results you need or whatever, like I had one woman, she was just like, I'm sleeping better. And I'm like, well, roll with that. And it really doesn't matter why she's sleeping better. What matters is that she's sleeping better. And I think that's the most important thing for all of this stuff. Is like, if you're getting the result that you want and that you need, then continue doing what you're doing. And if you're not, don't be afraid to reach out to people to report that. Okay. So let's do this thing. And he goes as far as to do an experiment with you guys, basically. Right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you all to close your widow peepers. So everybody's going to close their eyes. All right. And he says, now imagine that your awareness is a glowing ball of light. So start your little glowing ball of light, rev it up. But now it's growing. Now you have this little ball of light. That's your awareness. And he says, now I'm going to ask you to, take your awareness to your feet, chair, your hands, the room, your furniture, onto the next room. Then he says, take your awareness to the last really good meal you ate. What was it? Where were you? How did it smell? What did you drink? Was it morning? Was it evening? And he says, take your awareness to the last wedding you were at. Was her dress nice? Was the food good? Anybody drink too much? Anybody cry? Did you cry? He says, gradually take your ball of light back to the floor, the bottoms of your feet, palms of your hands, your little bobo in the chair, up to the top of your head. And now open your eyes. So the point of that was, and it's funny because I can't see you all, but he says, like, how did I know you were doing it? Because, and it's true, usually when I can see you guys, some of you will go, you know, or you see people making faces as we travel. But the point is that before I brought it to your attention, you weren't thinking about any of that junk. Then the longer your little glowing ball of light was there, the more that portion of your mind was illuminated. And you begin to remember this or remember that, okay? And that, the point of that was to show you that it's not your mind wandering, it's your awareness. All of those memories and all of those things, they're always there. Your algebra portion, it's there. It's just really hard to keep your awareness there because it's uncomfortable. It's stressful. And it is stressful. Like sitting there doing algebra for your future is a little stressful, okay? It's not gonna just magically not be stressful, but that's part of why it's so easy to get distracted from it because there are just more comfortable things to think about. But you wanna be cognizant of your awareness and where it's going. And then if you can try to figure out why, meaning that like, if you're doing algebra and then all of a sudden you're just like, you know, how did you get there? Like what happened? And if you feel yourself like on the way there, see if you can head it off at the pass. Like the real truth is like, I will never tell you to study more than 45 minutes at a time. And in a perfect world, you're gonna stop and do the next subject and then come back, okay? And that's usually like, you know, I guess another really funny one, right? Is that like when I was in couples therapy and it took me about a year afterwards to realize this, but like in couples therapy, they'll tell you not to speak with anything with your significant other for longer than 50 minutes. Oh, it's actually 45 minutes. It's 45 minutes. It's the exact same amount of time, 45 minutes. And it's funny because the woman I was dating at the time, I started timing it. And like, no matter how civilized the conversation started, like it would go off the rails and I would check and guaranteed it was right around the 50 to 55 minute mark. Okay. And I'm pretty sure like you just get fatigued. And the reason you get fatigued is because we are not designed to focus on anything for that length of time. So it's like if you are working and you find your awareness runs off, you may need to just take a break. Pomodoro breaks you every 15 minutes or so for like a 5-minute break. I'm going to tell you take a 15-minute break every 45 minutes. What all of this says to me is that if you feel like you need to take a break, you probably do. So it's that maintaining traction doesn't look like you never falling off the track. It looks like you falling off the track for the shortest amount of time possible and then getting back on. And as effective a way as possible. Meaning like you're sitting there and the next thing you know, you're thinking about Netflix. And you're like, dang, how did I even get here? Well, you might be better served just thinking about Netflix for the next 10 to 15 minutes, as opposed to just being like, and then trying to push your mind back, your awareness back to algebra. You may be better off leaving it there and then coming back. But understanding that when you find your awareness has wandered away, that's a natural, and don't try not to fight it. Another great thing to do is when your awareness does that is to switch subjects. That's what I did. That's how I coped, okay? Because to this day, like I generally cannot read any longer than 25 to 35 minutes, unless it's like nonfiction or I'm just like, or unless it's fiction or I'm just into it. Like, what is this? And the chances are, if I do read longer than that, I probably don't remember the last couple of pages I read, all right, to this day. But what I did is that the moment I found my awareness wandering off, then I went and I did the next subject. Okay, and then I got this job and come to find out, that's what everybody should be doing. It's a big surprise. I thought I was slacking, cheating and stuff. So now we come to this gentleman. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that last one? That's low key, that's actually my favorite part. Yeah, if you try too hard, right? If you try too hard, you get angry, and now you're just everything's going the wrong direction. Like there comes a point where it's just like, woo, I'm not paying attention, and you just need to relax, you know. And if you can, like, laugh at yourself for 10 seconds. Turns out oxytocin is the not just the happy hormone, but it's the learning hormone. So if you can, if you can find some humor, you know what I'm saying, in your situation, you're that much more likely to get back on task and remember what you're doing. I mean, if you really think about it, it's humorous overall, considering that, just considering how unaware we are of this trend, and how much it's driving our society and some of our self-image. But we were never intended to do it in the first place. It's like, trying to find, a 5'3", a 5'3" woman that can dunk a basketball. Not very likely, no matter how hard she works. And trying to watch somebody do that over time, eventually it's going to be comical, much to their chagrin, but you're going to laugh. And that's kind of the situation that we're in. We're sitting here doing this, but 9 times out of 10, we're not built this way. Okay. So my man, all this stuff came from YouTube, and I have all these links, and I can't remember if Alita has them or not, but I really invite you to come and check these out, because this gentleman, his whole thing was around, like, we're not distracted, we're overstimulated, meaning like it's just too many hamburgers. And the biggest thing I got out of this is that, number one, like, we need to let our awareness travel from time to time, right? Like, when I break you for lunch, I break you for a solid hour, and I'm like, don't do nothing during that hour. You are not going to magically figure out that problem looking at Instagram. Your brain needs time to do its own thing. If we are constantly pushing information into our brain, when does our brain have an opportunity to push information out? Which is, I personally believe that energy is always either traveling one direction or the other. It's never stagnant. So either the world is influencing us or we're influencing the world. And if we're constantly staring at our phones for it to tell us what in the world we're supposed to be thinking, when do we get to generate any new thought? And that's a lot of what this dude is saying. Like I'm a big proponent that we are at our best when we're creating. Okay. One of the number one hallmark probably of humanity is cooperation. And I think after that is our ability to be creative, to solve problems. And I think that's when we're at our best. And I don't know if you guys have any personal artistic pursuits or anything like that, but I know this gentleman says that it takes, I think, what did he say? Like 7 days or 6 days or something to completely detox. Meaning that, like, I don't know how many of you guys, like, you feel like I need a vacation from my vacation. That's because you went, like, you unplugged from work, but you plugged right back in and then went at the same clip. There is a reality where you're not doing any of that junk. You're not running from site to site. You know what I'm saying? You're not booking hotels, and you're not sitting around doing algebra either. And that's a very important place to be, because I think our creativity is just on the other side of that. Okay. And I noticed that over break. For the first break, I'm off work. And that's about it for the first week, Christmas break. And a lot of you guys don't get to do this. One of the best parts about being an educator is got like a month for Christmas almost. So the first week, I'm just off of work. I'm just not working. Okay. By that second Sunday, I'm rapping everywhere. I'm in the shower eating MCs up. I'm rapping MCs. I'm rapping all over the place. I wake up first thing in the morning and I start DJing. And then I get done with that and I'll write a rhyme. Then I get that and I'll go over there and I'll make some food I never made in my life. But that first week, I'm just resting from being off work. So what I'm really trying to hip you to is that, like, your mind really needs downtime, like real downtime. Okay. And in a perfect world, it's not watching TV. It's down. This gentleman, this is a really good one to watch, as a matter of fact. This gentleman went as far as to bore himself for an hour a day. He has a blog and he reached out to everybody and he said, what are the most boring things that you can think of? Okay. In an effort to decrease the amount of stimulation in his life, to let his brain begin to stimulate the world, so to speak. And a lot of us are sitting here like, Joe, I don't have time for this. And I'm like, yeah, probably not, especially if you got kids. But it's important to understand the way that we are made, the way that we are built. And the universe will not grant you something that you do not ask for. You know what I'm saying? But first, you need to realize that it's something you might need. Then you have to begin to ask for it so that the universe can facilitate. And I'm telling you now, what you need is some downtime. You need to find some time to let your mind rest. At least an hour a day, man. In the middle of the day, if that's at all possible, try to sit there and let your stuff rest. Yeah, we only got 15 minutes left. I don't know how.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
How, because I know some of the people who have joined us are already in, prereqs, or some of them are already in program, and they're always feeling like I cannot waste a minute.
It's true. I mean, you guys, it is very dense, right? You guys have a lot of material. But I will tell you something, if I may, right, to be as general as I possibly can. You guys are going to not like this, but man, in my experience, I've been sitting here for 7 years. And if you're a healthcare professional, you guys are cut from a very special cloth. It is a cloth that makes you amazing nurses, but it does not always make you an efficient student. And that's just the truth. You guys expect life to be difficult. And no matter how many times I try to tell you, wait, you're doing it the long way. Like I have students that will swear they don't have time to eat. Okay. But they don't have time to eat because they don't take time to eat. There are certain things that you need to take time to do. Like a lot of times you guys are doing things the most difficult possible way, making it that much more difficult. Okay. Look, I'm going to show you something from something else. This is the most used resource that we have. All right. So to this point, right, after all of this, I guess it's probably a really good segue, because if you look here, look at Friday, and then look at the top, and you see him going across the top, that's working horizontally. Friday is working vertically, right? So you see horizontally, it's like government at the same time every day. But vertically, we're shifting every hour, because the longer you continue to do one thing, the less you will remember. And the longer you continue to solve the same problem, the more difficult it becomes. So if you plan to work for 5 hours, you're going to work for 5 hours. What I'm proposing is that you learn to start working horizontally so that you're doing 1 to 2 hours every day, not 5 hours 3 times a week. But we have to get in here and talk, you know what I'm saying? But it is very dense, and it does feel like you don't have a minute, but I can all but guarantee you that you do. Because like what happens is that if you don't take that minute, over time, it accumulates. And you get what feels like further and further behind, or you have more and more things to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. But guys, come in and we can talk more about that. Here's that 8 days for your brain to detox. And then there you go. Man, I didn't realize there were slides for all of this. Man, I know this whole thing by heart. Right. And then, so look here, guys, and this is the last point I'll leave you with or whatever. And it's like, focus is not the absence of distraction. It's something you need to practice and cultivate. Meaning that if we wipe out all of the whatever, we get our phone, and that's what Near talks about. Like he got rid of his phone and still found junk to keep him from cleaning the house. And that's what will happen. If you do not practice and cultivate, like maintaining your awareness, all you're going to do is eliminate distractions, and you're just going to find something else. And that's what I found out when I went home. You know, I went home for quarantine and I still don't have a six-pack, because you find other things to do. You need to really address, first of all, like what is triggering you on your way to distraction. And then you really need to work on cultivating your awareness, maintaining your awareness, which is something no one wants to talk about, is meditation. Surprise. You know what I'm saying? And so this is the last thing I'm gonna leave you guys with. This is actually one of my favorite meditations. You can go find it on YouTube. I would share it with you, but my man's a little bit colorful and we're taping this time. But I'm sure all of you hip hop fans out there, there's nothing that he will say that you have not heard before. Any of you parents out there, I'm sure there's nothing he's gonna say that you haven't heard, that you haven't said yesterday. No, but check it out. This one in particular is about, what he says is that he likes to see himself as the center of his universe. And when he feels overwhelmed, he looks at all of these things, including algebra, including our children, right, as planets revolving around him. He is the sun, and all of these things are revolving around you. But guess what? You're not going to knock any of them out, neither our algebra nor our children. But when one of them comes inappropriately, right, like maybe, you know, worrying about your significant other, for say, I mean, I hesitate to say children. Obviously, everybody's going to go, oh, my child comes first, which is true. But, you know, or Netflix, for that matter, even Netflix, right? It's just orbiting around you. If you're sitting there doing algebra and you're trying to look at algebra and Netflix is popping you on the side of the head, he's like, yo, don't sit there, get frustrated, get upset. You got to grab a hold of Netflix, take a look at it, say, oh, Netflix, I really do love you, Netflix. Kiss Netflix, and then put Netflix back out there in orbit where it belongs. If that makes, it sounds kind of wild, but I'm telling you, if you spend 5 minutes quietly every day practicing, it gets easier and easier. And the same thing happens when I was steering your awareness all around your mind. You learn to do that for yourself. And you're paying more attention and you realize what you're thinking about and why. You know, like some of us, we had like nervous eaters. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever just looked up and been like, why am I even eating this? I mean, most of us don't think twice about it anymore. We're sitting there eating all kinds of sugary stuff while we work. Then we wonder why we can't focus. Well, you're pumping yourself full of sugar, fam. Like, that doesn't work for the kids. It doesn't work for you neither. So that's what I mean. It's like the first thing we need to do is become aware of ourselves and where we are, what's going on. And then we take our awareness and we put it where we want it to go. So first, really, you need to stop and center yourself. Center yourself and just and find out what it really means to sit there and be centered without distraction. And then you can take that awareness, that center, and you can put it where you need it to go. You can put it to algebra. You can put it to A&P. And then when one of them comes in there, you know how to look at it, stop and say, oh, algebra, I'm going to deal with you later. And put it back in orbit and then go back over here and grab A&P, which is what you're supposed to be doing right now, and vice versa. But I mean, obviously, guys, I will talk about this stuff till I'm blue in the face. This is one of my very favorite things. It's one of the things I hated most when I got the job. And now it's like one of my very favorite things. You guys are all welcome to make an appointment. We'll go through this entire thing again. You can sit here and tell me how much junk it was, how much it didn't work, whatever it is you feel like you need to do. But I guarantee you, I will be here and receptive and ready to talk about this. And then like the time management thing, obviously the time management is the thing that I do the very, very most. But I mean, guys, you know, I've been here for 7 years, okay? When I got here, I wasn't really trained to do much. It was just like, Joe, help them. And I was like, with what? And they were like, anything. And 7 years later, like, you don't need to know what's going on. If you just come and say, man, I'm unhappy, and I'll be like, have a seat, and we'll put it together. And I mean, that's the truth. You don't need to know nothing. All you need to know is you're not getting what you want out of this or whatever. And I will help you figure out why.
Do we have any questions? Joe, I'm going to share something. So
yeah, I'm going to stop.
Okay. And then I can, okay. And
Yeah, and you guys that came in here late, you know what I mean, or whatever, please, any questions, comments, or concerns?
Please, guys, use the chat or unmute. I want to say thank you for Joe for sharing with us. And now, you know, I left this whole picture of the little rocks because that's where we're trying, you know, we're trying to like find that focus.
Yeah.
Being able to do that balance. And, you know, so hopefully you learn some ways in which you can do it. I will be putting all of the links in the student community Facebook page. And here is the link to it. If, you know, and what I was going to ask you was to maybe share there I didn't want to do that. Share their, what is going on with my computer?
I'm glad it was you and
what
not
happened.
me.
Okay, there it goes. Okay, share what are some of the things that you do to be able to focus yourself back in? Because everybody's different. Everybody will use different ways of focusing and of centering. And so if you do that, I will start a chat there in the Facebook so people can share things that they do to be able to center and focus. I wanted to say thank you to you guys for being with us here today. And as Joe said, Joe is there. ACC Academic Coaching is incredible. You can go to anything. You can also come to the Navigators. We're here to support you. We want you to be successful, and we'll find resources. And many times we will say, you need to go to academic coaching. And, you know, and we know why we say it, because it is very helpful. Okay, guys, we only have a few more seconds, a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions or anything, please unmute, talk, do whatever.
Yeah, I think I have a little time to hang out too, guys, if you want to talk. So look at my calendar.
Well, I'm glad you're here, because I know that in nursing, it takes a lot of time to focus. And I hope you got something of it. I am one. Leah, another navigator, is always telling me I need to learn how to take breaks. And it's a hard one. But then I push myself too hard and then I'm mad, you know? Yep. So I need to learn to take those breaks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a tendency to do that too. You know what I mean? But you got to stop and eat and on all of that. Mm-hmm. You're more efficient. It's just hard. It's hard to believe sometimes, but like sometimes if you stop, like what was going to take you 2 hours will take you an hour and a half. Like my favorite example is like, if we ever like go to sleep, you ever just like get to the end of the night and be like, man, I'm not doing no more of this algebra. I've had it. And then you just go to sleep and then you wake up in the morning and you think, ooh, glad I went to sleep. And it's so easy. And it's not because you got lucky. It's because it was legitimately that difficult for you to do. The longer the day goes on, the more fatigued your brain becomes. The moment you open your eyes in the morning and start listening, you start burning calories. So every question you answer, every decision you make, every right and left turn in the car is burning calories. So by the end of the day, like you're just burnt, and that's just the way it is. The same thing goes for trying to solve one problem. If you sit there and you try to figure out one problem at length, it becomes more difficult to solve. So you're better off trying for 1 hour and then stopping and coming back. Because if you try to do it straight, it's going to take you 3 hours. If you do 1 hour and stop and come back, it's going to take you an hour and a half.
That's great advice. Okay, anybody else? Questions, comments? Was anybody surprised by any of this?
And thank you for all the positive feedback. Nobody taught me either, man. Mm-hmm.
Great, Chassie. Yeah. So glad that you're here.
Thank you for
I know
sharing.
somebody, you know, it's true. Nobody teaches us how to concentrate.
No,
like,
no one.
Nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
They just tell us that we need to concentrate, but nobody tells us how to.
Right. Yes. And get mad at you. Exactly. And then we all have these negative self-images of ourselves because we're getting reprimanded so early that we all think that we're broken. Pay attention. Pay attention. Shit, man. I've been listening to you talk for an hour. I'm only 6. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even care about this information. Like, how am I just going to pay attention? You know? And so that's the first thing that Don DePani says or whatever. And it's true. I'll tell you something else. You know, there's a reason. The last time I went and got evaluated for ADD was for this job. And like, oh, we're not recording, so I can talk now. But like,
oh, wait. I haven't stopped. Wait.
Well, it don't matter. But it was for this job, right? And so I told